The chest is one of the most important muscle groups to bring out when it comes to building an aesthetic physique. So I'm going to be breaking down exactly how I built mine naturally over the course of 7 years and how I also took my barbell bench from 20 to 140 kilos in the process. By the end of this video, you'll know the 7 principles that I put into play myself to bring out my chest, and you'll know exactly how to put them into play yourself too if you're trying to bring out your chest. So make sure you stick around. Now before I start, I want to talk a little bit about my story. So 15-year-old Zach, first of all, in school, 55 kilos, the weasel of the group. I had nothing to me, had low confidence, felt insecure taking my top off at the beach, for example. Sleeves on my t-shirts dripped down my arms, right? And they were small t-shirts. And I think that's where a lot of this stemmed from when I first started. I then went on, joined the military, went from mum's chicken nuggets and chips straight to actual food, started doing my press-ups, burpees, all of that shit. And then by the end of that, I came out at about 65 kilos by the end of my basic training at 16 years old. So after that, I ended up going to the gym with one of the boys that I went through basic training with. He said, Zach, come for a workout with me, we're gonna hit chest. I said, fucking too right, let's do it. Just put on a good amount of weight through basic training. And we went to the gym, he took me in. We started off on the barbell bench, and I'll never forget this. He went in and warmed up with one plate on either side, gave the barbell to me. We didn't even start with any weight on there, and I think I couldn't even do more than 3 reps, just the bar that was. And it was since that day in the gym that I said to myself, I'm gonna bench 100 kilos, I'm gonna give it my all over years and years. And eventually 5 years, at the age of 21, I hit 140 kilo bench, and I learned a fucking lot in the process. So this is everything I'm about to explain to you is everything I learned, so you can do it yourself, and so you can triple the speed that you did it in. And I mean it when I say it, it took me a lot to learn this. So starting off with the first principle is gonna be scapulae retraction. So you're probably thinking scapulae retraction, what the fuck does that mean, Zach? So this is essentially when you pin your shoulder blades back. So pinned shoulder blades. So the best way to describe this is this pen, get it in between my shoulder blades and I squeeze it together. That is called scapulae retraction. And before every single pressing movement, before every single fly movement, before every single chest movement, I retract my scapulae. And the reason I do this is purely because of number 1, safety. So retracting your scapulae is a lot safer when you're pressing, when you're doing your fly movements, because you're creating and shifting more tension onto your chest and less onto your front delt because your shoulder blades are retracted. So that is the reason number 1, and that's why to this day, touch my head, I've never had a shoulder injury. And then number 2, I just said it then, tension. So tension's our best friend when we're doing any chest movements, purely because we want more tension in the chest so it grows and gets stronger at a faster rate. So I learned retracting my scapulae creates more tension and it's a lot safer. So put this into play yourself every time you're pressing, every time you're doing your pec fly. Remember, pen in between your shoulder blades. Now a second principle I learned along the way was range of motion and how to utilize it for your chest movements. So starting off with your flat barbell bench, so barbell. So for the flat barbell bench, I learned that bringing the bar down to my chest gets me a better stretch, and then in turn helps me grow more and helps me press more longer term. So I actually ended up at some point through my journey, I remember, never forget, dropping down the weight purely so I could get the bar to touch my chest. And then after I did that, took a step back to take 2 steps further forward and grow a lot quicker. So bar to chest for my flat barbell press, but we need to remember natural range of motion for your fly and incline movements. So everyone has their own natural range of motion for their fly and incline movements. And what I mean by this is when people come in and do their fly movements, for example, you come down a certain way, right? And when you're coming down through your fly, you get to a certain point where you're getting a stretch on your chest. You go any further past that point and the tension goes onto your front delts. So this one is huge for safety and also for keeping tension in the chest. So the way that I do this and the way that I did this was warm-up sets. I thought, right, where's my natural range of motion? I learned where it was. And then when I did my main working sets, I knew not to take it past that natural range of motion. This helped me with safety and helped me grow a lot quicker. It's exactly the same for your incline movements. A lot of people think bar to chest for your incline movements, which definitely isn't the case, right? Because you come down so far, and then if I come down any further than this, that's all on my front delts. So keep that in mind, guys. Natural range of motion for your fly and incline movements. Now the third principle that I put into place were compound lifts And for me, it was specifically the barbell flat bench. I used the barbell flat bench, and what I did was I programmed it twice per week, and I did it at the start of both of my push sessions. I didn't do the fucking bro split. We don't do the bro split around here, but I programmed it first at the start of my push sessions. The reason that I did this and the reason I stuck with one compound lift is, first of all, compound lifts are so much easier to progressively overload on because you're recruiting more than one muscle group. Second of all, it meant I could practice it. Practice is key for a big movement like the barbell bench. So I stuck with that and I did it, practice it until eventually I got to the 140 kilo bench. Now, you don't have to do the barbell flat bench like I did, but all I would recommend is finding one compound lift. So this could be the dumbbell flat press, the machine incline press, the dumbbell incline press, the barbell incline press, right? You get the gist of it. Any pressing movement, I would highly recommend you find one of them that you enjoy, stick with it, and do it twice per week at the first of every session. Progressively overload it on it, and you know that your chest is growing. Now, just another little insight into how I program this. So I put my compound lift, which was the barbell flat press, the first of each session, and then each session, so between the two sessions, I went from what was a strength bias rep range, so it was literally 4 sets of 5 reps, and then in my second session, it was more of a hypertrophic bias, so it was 3 sets of 8 reps, sometimes 10, sometimes 12. But the reason that I did this is because I'd work on strength, build that up a little bit, work on hypertrophy, so grow my chest, build a little bit more muscle, and then they go hand in hand. This is how I like to program for a lot of my clients too, and how I'd recommend programming your compound lifts if you're trying to bring your chest out. So next up, we've got hand placement, when you're specifically pressing, and a little bit to do with your flies as well. So hand placement, when I was doing my pressing and when I still do, I would have my hands stacked over elbows. So hands directly stacked over my elbows. So I want you to look now, hands are stacked over my elbows, hands are not stacked over my elbows, stacked over my elbows, not stacked over my elbows. So they're directly stacked over my elbows when I was doing my pressing movements. Now the reason that I do this is, first of all, produce more force. So this helps produce more force through the chest. Now the reason that it helps you produce more force through your chest is because if your hands are stacked too narrow, you're going to be biasing the triceps. Smaller muscle group, which is harder to progressively overload on and harder to grow on, right? So we want to produce more force through the chest. If we go too wide, then we risk putting tension onto the front delt, which we also don't want because we want to lift safely. So for that reason, I'd stack my hands directly over my elbows. Now, I'd also ensure for all pressing, all fly movements, everything, that my elbows are tucked at a 45-degree angle to my front delt. So as opposed to having them flared like this, which puts a lot of tension on the front delt, I'd have them tucked. So this is purely so I can safely push as much fucking weight as I can, right, through the chest when I'm pressing and when I'm doing my fly movements. So elbows tucked at 45 degrees. Now the next training principle is progression. So how did I progress through my bench, through my pressing movements, and also through my fly movements? So let's start with pressing movements. So for pressing movements, I would micro load every session. So what I mean by micro load is the little biscuits, the little 1.25s, I would add them on every session and try and match the reps that I had set. So I'm just gonna break down an example of why this is a useful way to progress for your big lifts, right? Let's just say you did 100 kilos for 10 reps, one session. So we calculate the total load for that now. And the way that we look at this is just 100 times 10 is 1,000 kilos, right? So now let's just say we progress this one and we do 100 kilos times 11. Now I know not everyone's gonna be benching 100 for 10 or 11, but this is just an example. So 100 times 11, if we do the reps now, that's 1,100 kilos total load, right? So we've gone from 1,000 to 1,100. Now let's just say we were to progressively overload on this one and we were to micro load it. So 102.5 kilos for 10. So stay with me. So 102.5 kilos for 10 reps, that'll be 1,025 kilos total load. So the easier progression is always going to be to add on a tiny bit of weight and keep the reps the same. So 1,025 kilos as opposed to 1,100 kilos total load. That is why we progress and why I progressed by using the little biscuits. Now for your fly movements, it's a little bit different. So for your fly movements, I would suggest working in a rep range. So rep range, and I'll just put fly there. So working in a rep range. So I would, let's just say on the pec fly, you got 50 kilos, I would go between an 8 to 12 rep range, nice and easy. I'd go 50 kilos one session for 8, 50 for 9, 50 for 10, 50 for 11, 50 for 12. Once I hit that 12, I'd go 55 for 8, 9, 10, constantly progressively overloading and progressing the stimulus for my chest. So that is how I did progression for my chest. Remember, the chest is a very big muscle group, which is why we've got to be smart with the way that we're progressing, especially for our pressing movements. Now, the next principle that I put into play was I prioritized the upper chest. The reason that I prioritized this part of my chest is because it's aesthetic. It creates a lot more structure through your chest, which is why you see a lot of the top 1%, a lot of these influencers looking good, is because they've got a well-rounded, well-proportioned, especially upper chest. Not so much the lower chest, because you don't want to set a saggy tits. So for that reason, I prioritized incline movements after my flat press. So it was literally, my gym sessions would consist of one flat press, and then I'll go 2 exercises that would include the upper chest and bias the upper chest. So I work within 30-degree max, incline max. So if I'm doing a Smith incline press, for example, it will be no higher than 30 degrees. Anything higher than this, then a lot of science studies state that you're just biasing the front delt and doing more of a front delt bias movement. So for that reason, no higher than 30 degrees, literally 2 clicks up. Any higher is front delt. Now for my flies, I would also do low to high flies. So that would also bias the upper chest. So a lot of people, let me just double check this one's in. So a lot of people, they come in, they do their flies, they do their high to low flies. We don't want to do that because that biases the lower chest. We want to do low to high so we can bias the upper chest. So it's either incline pressing movements at 30 degrees, no higher, or low to high flies. And that would literally consist of 70% of my sessions for the upper chest. So don't neglect the upper chest for an aesthetic looking chest. And then the last principle was actually a 70 to 30 pressing to fly ratio. So 70% of my chest work every time I train push would be pressing movements. 30% of it would be fly. So I'd normally do 2 pressing movements and then 1 fly movement. I'd do about 6 sets total pressing, 2 sets total doing flies. Now the reason that I do this is first of all because pressing movements are much easier to progressively overload on, because like I said earlier, they're a big compound lift. So if you can progressively overload and get as strong as possible, pressing movements are going to be your best friend, which is why I did 70% pressing movements. Now the reason that fly movements are so good, first of all because they're great for the stretch and contraction, in turn helping with mind-muscle connection. So when you're doing a fly movement for your chest, you're going to get a great deep stretch on it because you're isolating the chest, and you're also, when you come up to the top, going to get a great contraction and still keep tension in the chest. So keep in mind, when you're doing your pressing movements, you're going to come up, lock your elbows out, not a lot of tension on the chest. Do your fly movements, you come out, squeeze your pec, a lot of tension on the chest. So don't neglect your flies as well, but just do 30% of your workouts. You're going to get a lot better mind-muscle connection by doing your flies. So for those of you that are trying to bring your chest out, if this seems like it's too much information to put into play yourself, I'm currently coaching lads at the minute and helping them bring out their chest too, just like I did with mine. So I'll include a link below if you want to hit me up, you want to reach out on WhatsApp to inquire for coaching. We can have a little chat, see if I can help and see if we're the right fit. And if not, you don't want coaching, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you took away some tips to put into play yourself. And as always, peace.